Well, good evening and welcome to our second budget meeting. I guess we'll start. Before we start, I will remind council that this portion of the meeting is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube. I will also remind council to speak clearly and project their voice when they're talking so people viewing at home can hear. And I will do a roll call for the benefit of the public watching this meeting. When I call your name, please wave at your camera and say here or present. I, Mayor Shantz, am here and chairing this meeting. Councillor Martin.
Present.
Councillor McMillan.
Present.
Councillor.
Present.
Councillor Redekop will be slipping in later. He had another commitment he had to scoot out for, and Councillor Shantz.
Present.
Thank you. We'll start with a moment of silence. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Not seeing any. A motion that council convenes into committee of the whole. Moved by Councillor Shantz, seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favor? Thank you. Okay, we'll jump right into the budget. There was a question whether we wanted to do fire first, but it sounds like our two chiefs are gonna stick around for the whole meeting regardless. So I guess we'll start right away with recreation and community services, and over to you, Ms. MacArthur.
Great, thanks so much through you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to have some opening remarks and lead off our presentation operating first, and then Jen and Thomas are both been gracious enough. We're going to carry a substantial load in discussing some of the different aspects of our department tonight. Then we'll move from that to Recreation and Community Services Capital, and then we'll let Chief Mark take over and Dennis and speak to Fire Services Operating and Capital. So maybe Jeff, if you could pull up the Community Services Operating and just go to the second slide, and I'll just have some opening remarks and then we'll move from there. So this is just a comment that was out of the strategic plan, and I think it really bodes well to what our department, one of our key focuses is. So, as I lead into my comments, it won't be any surprise to council that 2020 posed to be a particularly challenging year for our department. Of all the departments, we have experienced many ups and downs, many starts and many stops, and then some restarts, and then another pause to programs. SMT and I are cognizant that the longer the pandemic continues and the ongoing uncertainty that comes with that, it has impacted staff's health and well-being, but we appreciate, however, that we're not alone in this feeling. Staff appreciate that council, has provided us with some flexibility as we strive to navigate the pandemic in the most effective and efficient manner. With that being said, staff are doing their very best to balance fiscal accountability to both council and the taxpayer with the health and wellness of our community. So like many businesses, we experienced months of uncertainty, operating of program cuts and 2 rounds of layoffs, the second one just before Christmas. We were tasked with pivoting repeatedly to reinvent ourselves through innovative and alternative program and service delivery. Staff were immersed in public health protocols, ever-changing government restrictions, while striving to provide some semblance of service to the public. I would note that the budget before you was built throughout the fall based on provincial trends at the time that saw a gradual reopening of facilities. With this in mind, staff have worked to develop and draft an operating budget that would see revenues hover at 80% of pre-pandemic levels. As you all are aware, by mid-December, the trends were reversing and operations have now been scaled back, with the current lockdown in place until January 25. So operations for us, as you know, remain fluid and unpredictable as we transition into 2020, with operations highly dependent on provincial restrictions. In 2020, the department saw revenue losses of 1.5 million. Staff cost containment plan assisted to mitigate almost 1.4 million. Other difficult decisions were implemented that saw staffing adjustments and reductions in staffing levels from 132 staff to 15 to return to 80 and down again to 20. It's really important to note that while this number is not all full-time staff, this includes part-time students, aquatics, and programming instructors who are all important part of our work family and key to rebuilding a successful operation. We have tackled many challenges and have lots of tears, mostly mine. However, my team has been really amazing. They're really strong, and we remain hopeful and we remain optimistic, and we are only looking forward and continue to plan to restore fundamental services to the public that will provide a sense of routine when facilities can reopen. Certainly lots of lessons learned, and one thing we have learned that no one can dispute the vital importance, the significant value, and appreciation for outdoor amenities from both an individual perspective and our collective community well-being, and what outdoor amenities provide to and enhance in terms of our quality of life. I think the world fully understands and appreciates the social, mental, and physical health benefits of spending time outdoors, the importance of community, the intrinsic desire and value of belonging and inclusion. The importance for our community to have opportunities to access free, safe, accessible, and inclusive recreation spaces are profound as communities look to rebuild. I can confidently say tonight that our team has worked hard with some really long days, but we remain committed to providing good customer service, providing safe outdoor amenities for the public to use, while access to indoor recreation remains limited. We will continue to respond and will continue to adapt as public health protocols are required, while continuing to implement a sizable work plan. I believe that staff had demonstrated the ability to persevere, the capacity to remain viable, and to develop and implement solid cost containment strategies that successfully limited losses. We've had to make difficult decisions in 2020, and we are prepared to continue to make difficult decisions as we transition through 2021. I think another thing I need to highlight tonight is we remember as we traverse the budget overview, the sheer volume of people visiting outdoor and indoor spaces on a daily basis. So even during lockdown, and when facilities are open, we typically see 4,000 to 5,000 people through all of our facilities. When we're in the red zone, we were reduced to 400 at the WMC, but we're probably still seeing upwards of 1,000 people outdoors. And a good example is the splash pad, where we saw 12,000 people or 200 people in a day, which is about 25% of the capacity of that amenity in just 7 weeks. So, and that's just one part of the 19 that we have. So, additionally, a key highlight to notice with regards to our budget versus actuals. So what is evident in the budget before you is that almost every GL is underspent in 2020. I would advocate tonight that these are not opportunities for permanent budget reductions, that these were strategic measures put in place at a moment in time that reflected the current state of the pandemic. This budget will be needed to ensure the township is able to normalize operations as restrictions ease. And I believe the community will both need and expect access to indoor amenities in a timely fashion. So while the recreation side of our department may be paused, there continues to be significant workload in relation to facilities, both recreation and non-recreation, that the department continues to oversee and implement. From an overall perspective for the department, we have few enhancements proposed to the department's budget, and I am suggesting to carry forward an operating budget very similar to that of 2020. Tonight's staff very much look forward to highlighting and sharing some of the great work that the rest of our staff and our team are doing in our community. I think we can move on. So just here's kind of an overview of the different areas we're going to speak to tonight. And then we'll, as I said, going to take turns chatting about it. So I'm going to start off in terms of just kind of a general department overview and a couple highlights generally from the budget, which I've noted is going to remain status quo for the most part in 2020. This was achieved in part due to $360,000 in provincial safe restart funding, which will offset anticipated revenue loss during the lockdown of January 2021. Also within this budget is debenture repayment of $260,000. I should note the department was successful in garnering $575,000 through grants, partner funding, and donations, which will help the delivery of some important programs, events, and services, such as Senior Center, Canada Day, Lions Park, the Health Fair, and tree planting. I guess kind of the goal overall, right, is just to continue to rebuild programs and capacity through 2021 to back to where pre-pandemic levels sat. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I think that was that one. There's some pretty pictures to see before we move on to the next slide, please. Just want to touch on pandemic response, recovery, and provincial restrictions. So a couple things in terms of service levels. I think it's important to recognize the work of staff, my staff. They've spent a lot of time, we have spent a lot of time interpreting legislation and in turn implementing that into the delivery of programs, which was, I would say, an adventure. So we were changing, from 10 people to 25 people, back down to 10, and there's parents and there's no parents, and then there's 50 in the building and 50 in each area. And even when you're at 10% capacity, that still has, is difficult to facilitate. So I'd also like to acknowledge facility and unionized staff who are at the forefront of cleaning and sanitizing all of our buildings, areas after each use with increased exposure. So some of the logistics that we had to work with on a daily basis and that changed quite frequently are developing, and these are legislative requirements that were for safety plans. We had to approve and review return to play protocols from the different groups to see how they would fold into what we were doing, developing traffic flows, establishing controlled access into all the buildings, developing screening apps. And those are some of the things that we had to manage and change, kind of on a daily or weekly basis, depending on where the restrictions were sitting. I think it's important to highlight community expectations in that many community members and organizations, and rightly so, will want to have quick access and return back to facilities. However, I think it's appropriate for us to establish reasonable timeframes that, based on whatever in some of the cost saving measures we may have had to put in place, that there may be a bit of a time lapse or gap before we can restart some of those facilities and programs. And then I've already touched on kind of the budget versus actuals, and we'll talk more about the work plan as we move through tonight. Next slide. I think at this point, I'm welcome any questions, and if not, then I'm going to turn it over to Thomas and Jan, who are going to kind of talk about the WMC and facility, St. Jacobs facility.
Let me just see if I can spread my screen out here a little more so I can see it clear. There we go. Are there any questions? So far, so good. Okay.
Okay, good evening. Good evening, Council. So next we will move on to WMC and St. Jacobs facility operations. So the Woolwich Memorial Center operations is staffed by 8 full-time facility attendants and 10 part-time staff through the ice season. This group is responsible for operating the facility and equipment from 5:30 a.m. till midnight daily. Legal responsibilities of staff include refrigeration plant checks every 2 hours, cool testing every 3, and now disinfecting of the facility. Significant changes to the budget for 2021 come in the form of a revenue reduction in offsetting forecasted savings, primarily through utilities. Whether open or not, the facility equipment, HVAC, plumbing, electrical, refrigeration continue to operate some 365 days a year, albeit to a lesser extent. To mitigate losses and save on hydro consumption, we remove the ice on Snyder, and we have adjusted all building HVAC schedules, ice temperatures, pool heating, etc. 2021 will be the department's first complete year with the combined heat and power unit. However, a very difficult year for us to forecast the impacts and savings with the building closed and hydro requirements lessened. Staff have pulled budget numbers from the engineering study to populate natural gas, hydro, and maintenance contracts for 2021. Moving on to St. Jacobs. St. Jacobs is a single pad facility built in 1974, staffed in the evenings through September through March by 2 full-time staff and 1 part-time staff member. We typically have limited part-time help with this facility, typically just one guy every night. However, we've been forced to have some part-time help due to COVID and additional disinfecting and screening requirements. No significant changes to the budget for 2021 aside from revenue reductions. To mitigate losses, we have pulled the 2 full-time staff to the WMC to cover currently vacant positions. We have delayed filling these 2 unionized positions, however, will be required to in the coming months. Being that this building is now 47 years old, we're at a point where the majority of the equipment and facility components have or are soon reaching the end of their useful life. Of note, the rink, underfloor cooling, and arena boards are on the capital forecast for replacement at approximately $1 million. And minor capital projects for 2021 include upgrades to the lobby and dressing room washrooms for health and safety purposes, replacement of a water heater, and replacement of 2 18-year-old rooftop units using the COVID-19 resilience funding. So with that, I can take any questions before we jump to Jen.
Any questions? Councilor Relihan and then Chance?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz, to Thomas. You mentioned the cogen plant, and that was a note that I had wondering about the cost savings, and you mentioned that you can't really figure what that would be at this point because it just came online. But the one thing that I noticed that the budget was there was a savings of utilities. I don't have it exactly here, so if I get the numbers wrong because it's in my notes somewhere, it was 17,000 on the electricity, but the gas price was 77,000. I'm just wondering if you could speak to that. If maybe I'm not putting those numbers in the right way or looking at it differently, but I thought the cogen plant was supposed to be, being the opposite way.
Yeah, for sure. So through you, Mayor Shantz. Patrick, I think you may be pulling the actual from 2020 as a comparison from what we have budgeted in 2021, as opposed to the 2021 budgeted number from the 2020 budgeted number, which is 369,108. So we had reduced hydro this year because we had, we closed both rinks. We took both ice pads out as well as the pool. So.
Okay, so will this be a trend though that the natural gas price is higher than we anticipated?
No, so what we have in the budget from last year is a reduction of roughly $150,000 in hydro for next year from 2020. And then we have an increase in natural gas and then an increase in the maintenance contract as well.
Okay, I clearly misread that. Thanks.
Councilor Shantz?
Thank you. Through you to Thomas. I thought we did some work on the ice, the floor at St. Jacobs last year, or was it just on the books and never got done?
Through your Mayor Shantz. So I believe it was on our capital forecast. I think it may, if I'm maybe mistaken, but I believe it was for 2022, and we've just pushed that off.
Okay, thanks. I thought I saw it someplace before.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Jeff, if I could have the next slide, please. Thank you. As council is aware, all township programs were canceled just prior to March break of 2020, which had a pretty significant impact on department revenues, as well as impacting the many opportunities we offer to keep our residents active and engaged. During lockdown, staff were very successful with the launch of the Stay Home, Stay Active webpage, as well as increasing our Instagram and Facebook engagement. The webpage offered a variety of online class videos produced by our township fitness instructors, interactive websites, outside activities and challenges for families, as well as some fantastic virtual events such as Canada Day and Grow with Woolwich events. These events were complemented with activity kits that could be picked up at the Woolwich Memorial Center. As restrictions began to loosen, staff began a slow phased approach to reopening facilities and programs, with summer day camps being the first program offered. And I wanted to mention that this actually was offered prior to the actual reopening of our buildings. And I will speak about camps in a little bit. The reopening of our actual facilities began August 10th with the fitness center and limited fitness classes, as well as the St. Jacobs Arena, which opened for hockey skills training. Ever-changing COVID protocols such as program capacities, spacing, the need for separate times and separate entrances and exits for each program has led to some very interesting challenges as we implemented programs for the fall. Just to give you a few examples, all programs, which used to be drop-in, moved to an online pre-registration in order to ensure that we had contact tracing for all participants. And then beginning with the red zone, we had to have applicable health screening prior to participants entering the building. As you can imagine, there was a great deal of education that needed to be done with some of our older participants in order to assist them navigating our online registration portal. Limited capacities only allowed for 8 people per time block in our fitness center and a maximum of 10 people in fitness classes, aquafit, walking track, and public skate programs while we are in red. Aquatic public drop-ins were at a 25% pool capacity, but we could only have 15 people in the dressing room at a time. So just some of those challenges. Aquatic drop-in programs began September 14th with limited swim lesson programming beginning October 19th. We had private, semi-private, and aquatic leadership classes offered this fall. Some of the challenges there that we faced were due to limited class size and pool capacity sizes, accommodating non-swimmers who had to have their parents with them in the pool, and we had to bring in bubble buddies for all of our leadership classes. By far, our most popular programs this fall were Aquafit and Lane Swim, and Lane Swim had a 95% registration rate. I'm sure Councillor Merlihan can tell you how hard it was to get a lane. Unfortunately, Lane Swim was limited to 1 person per lane, which meant only 6 participants at a time in the lap pool. In order to make this more financially feasible, we coupled most lane swims with a family swim in the leisure pool at the same time. We are hopeful that as restrictions loosen, we can start to offer more spaces in these programs. The Woolwich Wave swim team came back in full force, and they were able to launch an extremely successful pilot of their Swim Together program, which was funded by a federal grant this year. So that was some good news. It was a program designed to have mothers and daughters swim together in a program coached by University of Waterloo swim coach staff. We have also started to rent pool space to the Region of Waterloo Swim Club. Despite restrictions, staff are pleased to note that the Woolwich Memorial Centre accommodated 5,600 people in drop-in programs from September to December. These included fitness center use, fitness programs, walking track, aquatics, and public skate. And this was approximately 40% of our normal drop-in numbers for the same quarter in 2019. Staff would note that WMC memberships are at about 25% right now of pre-COVID numbers, and it will take some time to rebuild these numbers once we are back to full operations. But we are hopeful that residents will be anxious to return to programs as soon as they are able. I would also like to add that the reaction from all of our participants has been extremely positive. There have been numerous comments and compliments that people feel safe and happy. They feel that staff are very diligent, and it really emphasizes to us the importance of activity to our residents and their physical and mental well-being. If there's any questions on that. And then I can move to rental. Jeff, next slide, please. The closure of facilities as of March 15th happened, of course, just prior to March break and the second round of Kings playoffs, which was a big hit to our facility rentals, in particular our ice rental revenue this year. It should also be noted that concession services was also closed as of March, and staff do not anticipate it reopening for 2021. As noted, the St. Jacobs Arena opened in mid-August, with the Snyder Arena pad brought online at the end of September and the McLeod pad as of November 9th after increased demand from our minor hockey associations. Unfortunately, COVID protocol changes brought on by moving from yellow to orange to red included the closure of dressing rooms and then a maximum of 10 participants per ice time, as well as the ban on games and scrimmages. And this resulted in us losing all adult user groups by the end of November. Majority of our adult user groups have indicated that should the region move back to an orange zone, they would like to return to play. Affiliated ice groups did continue to skate through the red zone restrictions, but with an additional subsidy approved by council, which has resulted in additional revenue losses of $35,000 to date. Since moving to the red zone, the department has also received numerous requests for financial support from other affiliated organizations, including the Woolwich Seniors Association and Woolwich Youth Soccer. Any questions?
Excuse me, Councillor Merlihan, go ahead.
Thank you through you, Mayor Shantz, to Ms. Horndal. I guess Ms. MacArthur at the beginning talked about, making the budget more than 80% of kind of expected revenues. And I'm sure when the budget was being made that, there wasn't an anticipation that we would start the year in a lockdown. Are there areas here in the budget that right off the get-go are not going to make it? Because some of the line items, and had we been going like page by page, I would have been able to point them out because I have them highlighted. But there was a number of line items that were pretty much back to like you were operating, like 2021 was going to be a regular year. One of them was, if I remember, events. And like there was event planning. There was things like Lions Hall, even the hydro's kind of back to normal. I'm just wondering, the large scale events and things are, unlikely to manifest in 2021, or even, at least 6 or 8 months from now, depending on how things go. So has there been any discussion at your level before the budget was just presented to us, whether or not some of those items could be adjusted?
Sure, certainly through you, Madam Mayor. I would say items like special events are mostly funded through grant funding. So for instance, the Canada Day event that took place virtually, those funds came through the government, through a federal grant. Our anticipation with program, especially aquatic program, if we're closed, we're not paying staff. And so we are actually kind of saving some money there. We hope that with any revenue loss, we can mitigate a lot of the direct costs for those programs. Staffing costs and material fees aren't being spent. So honestly, we were really hoping we'd be back to normal sooner than we are. I hope that answers. Annie may have some additional information for you.
Yeah, I guess this would be a question that would probably apply to a couple of different items here. Like, let's take the Lions Hall. The hydro is $10,500 budgeted. Last year, it was about $2,500, something like that, because it's been shut down mostly. Something like that. If we budget the $10,500 for that, is that money that we're putting on the levy right now that we're earmarking as being used for that specific purpose? Or is that something like, if we just pay what we owe, then it doesn't really matter? I don't know. There was a couple things that I was just wondering about how that accounting works.
I think Richard was ready to jump in on that one, but Ms. MacArthur, you had your hand, no? Okay.
She's deferring to me. Through you, Madam Mayor. So first address the Lions Hall hydro. So that's kind of really an in and an out. So it's that facility, the Lions Hall, is actually tied into our electrical. So we're the ones that actually, it's being built to us first, and then in turn what we actually, or what they consume, we actually just pass them a bill. So if they don't use the hydro, then it means we're also not paying the expense side of the hydro as well. So it's kind of an in and an out from that perspective.
Okay, then if we're budgeting the $10,500, are we asking for the taxpayers to, cover that amount? Is that part of, the operating budget then, the $10,500? And there was another item in here with the Elmira Sugar King's insurance day or whatever, and I know that's an in and an out too. And we budget $12,000 for that, and then a couple pages later, we get that amount, and actually I think they actually make some money off of that. So when we budget the $12,000, is that the same kind of thing where we're earmarking that money for that, and it's part of the tax base? And if we don't use it, I guess at the end of the year, maybe it goes transferred to a reserve fund or something, but is that something that we have to earmark that full amount?
So through Madam Mayor. So the in and out, what I'm referring to is that it's a no net cost to the township. So if they don't use the hydro or they don't use the insurance, we're not billing it. So it's an in and it's a really quick in and out. So as I said, there's a little bit of a premium that we actually collect from the insurance, but for the most part, if it doesn't happen, it's not going to be a bottom line impact to our budget, to the township.
Okay, is it a bottom line impact to taxpayers though? Is that like that operating budget? No?
No, because if we don't get the revenue in, we also didn't have the expense.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And also, Madam Mayor, just on the discussion about anticipating the lost revenue. So one of the things we did really late in the year, that was in the mid-late December time period, when the province announced an additional $233,000 in a Safe Start agreement, we actually took in that money and were able to further reduce the revenues within the RCS budget because we knew that as we were going to be going into a lockdown come Boxing Day, that some of these revenues were not going to be hit, especially in the months of January. So we were at least able to offset that with the money that we're receiving, that $233,000.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Anne, just a second, Scott, Anne, did you have something before that you want? No, you're good? Okay, Councillor McMillan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. Through you, I have a quick question, but before I get to that, I would like to take this opportunity to thank our staff. Being pretty involved in the hockey community here in Woolwich, the work that was done to keep teams on the ice and to, I won't say keep everybody happy, because minor hockey folks tend to be difficult to keep happy, but satisfied might be a better term. The work done to keep everybody active and engaged. I can't thank you enough for the work that was done to make that happen. I know I talked to our director of hockey operations, Jeff Snyder, with the Sugar Kings, and he said the amount of work that the Sugar Kings had to go through was mind-blowing, and he was getting frustrated with how much work the Sugar Kings had to do to keep us on the ice with all the public health restraints. And that was just one team, and we had 4 different associations, and how many different teams to keep involved. So the work that our staff went through to try to keep everybody happy and certainly to keep everybody engaged is incredible. So thank you very much to staff. The one question that I had was maybe Richard could answer better, and I don't need an answer tonight at all, but I thought last year we talked about the revenue from the minor hockey being reported as what it would be if they were charged the full amount, and then having another line item on the expenses that covered the subsidy. And it could be that I just can't see that, but I was wondering if that did get decided to report it that way, or if we changed our mind on that.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So when we further reduced the minor hockey rates, yes, we went down the road of actually recording the revenue and then having the expense offset that. So that's what we did in 2020. It's not built into the 2021 budget, but that's how we actually recorded the actuals in 2020.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so could we do that going forward? I know we talked about that last year and we agreed that we would. Does that create problems? I just think that it's easy for us to get lost in how much subsidy we're providing if we don't see it. And I think it might be a little bit more transparent if we actually see that expense as an expense line item for that subsidy that we're providing.
Yeah, through Madam Mayor. So I guess I think of that. I mean, we can do that. We can calculate that. I mean, we used to do that back when I started at the township. That's actually how we did it. We had the full cost going into the revenue. We had an offsetting expense to show the subsidy that was given, and then somewhere years later that just got reduced just to one net number in the revenue line. So if it's council's wish that you would like to see that, that's a change that we would have to make into the budget going into the final.
that's something that I've always thought would be helpful in terms of how we look at the, I guess, the income coming into the WMC and St. Jacobs Arena. It would better show, I think, sort of what the actual arena is doing. And you know, we often say it doesn't carry itself, but really it does carry itself. We're choosing to subsidize our youth. And from my point of view, I like having that front and center.
Yeah, so you through Madam Mayor, I probably shouldn't presuppose that RCS staff are going to be able to do that. I would leave that up to them whether they can have that accomplished or not. I don't want to speak for them.
I'm sure Emily and I can figure something out. She'll love it.
That sarcasm coming through there. A little bit. Councillor McMillan?
Yeah, it's certainly not something that I'm demanding tonight. I did think we talked about that last year. I think it would just help, like Mayor Sean says, with some of the public perception that, oh, the WMC costs us money. And, you know, does it? You know, I think it would be helpful to know that we're choosing to subsidize activity. And I think that's an activity that council, you know, should be encouraging. But it would help with the public messaging, I think.
So if you can do that before the final budget comes through, if it's possible, if it's a ton of work, then we'll try again next year.
Yeah, or a report in July or August. Like, I don't think, you know, I don't think it's something that we need this year by next week. That's just me speaking, but I if it came months from now, I think I'd be happy with that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Right, thank you, Madam Mayor. So maybe the direction for 2021 is, as we're going through our quarterly reports, maybe that is the spot that we can actually have that reported to council.
Okay. Yep, if that works easier at this point in time.
Yep.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay. Oh, Councillor Rohan, yeah.
Sorry, is that on the whole department right now, or is there another part?
Where are you?
Are we going to be doing parks or anything like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here now.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay, I missed that. Do you have more presentation?
Yeah, Jeff, if you could go to the next slide, please.
Go ahead.
This initial slide kind of demonstrates, you know, when we talk about parks, and there was lots of conversation previously about, you know, there's a lot of expense, you know, for ball diamonds and soccer fields. And I think it was really important for us to pull together, because sometimes we don't celebrate all of the and share all the good work that we do. So I wanted to capture, you know, kind of a high level of all the outdoor amenities that the township does own and does maintain. And Thomas is going to work through some of these things for you, and then we can have further discussion. So next slide, I think.
No, we'll stay on that one, Annie.
Okay.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, so limited budget enhancements for cemeteries and parks for 2021. Cemetery operations, including burials, niches, and grave restoration, consume a great deal of both administrative and operations staff resources, more so throughout the pandemic as a result of strict protocols issued by the Province and Bereavement Authority of Ontario. With capacity restrictions in place, the department has been required to provide increased staffing at internments to ensure a 1 staff per 10 attendee ratio is met. Moving on to parks. One of the greatest impacts of COVID-19 on the department has been the increase in use of township parks, trails, and open spaces. With facilities closed this past summer, it enabled staff to address this spike in demand with increased staffing resources to rectify park deficiencies, from horticulture needs to bench replacements. Operations staffing through the summer months remains a difficult balance for the department, with the majority of staff moving outdoors and yet still 30+ township facilities to maintain, including the WMC. We plan to continue to bring on 5 seasonal staff to complement our 10 full-time facility attendants for 2021. Staff responsibilities from May through October are focused on grass cutting, trail maintenance, sports field maintenance, garbage collection, gardening, playground and splash pad maintenance, and maintenance of our park facilities and bridges. A significant consumption of staffing resources in recent years includes the maintenance of 15 garden beds throughout the township. This work is carried out by 2 full-time seasonal staff, June through September, at $30,000 plus annually. The department continues to take on additional parkland, open space, and woodlots through development. In 2021 and 2022, RCS will inherit 10 plus acres of parkland in Maryhill, Elmira, St. Jacobs, and Breslau. In addition to parkland, the township will take on over 140 acres of woodlots, open spaces, and trails. This will come as a significant tax on our operations, specifically removal of hazard trees impacting trails and nearby residences. Parkland acquired through development often leaves the department in empty open space to fill with future amenities. However, no real direction for what is required and where. In recent years, we have taken cash in lieu for a reduction in the parkland provided, and then used this funding to install park features, playgrounds. With each development, predictions or a best guess are made for what is necessary based on the surrounding community, proximity of nearby parks, and park amenities. Development of a parks plan in-house will direct staff when inheriting lands moving forward. So I know Andy's going to touch on this later as well too, but minor capital items for 2021 include a parks plan, ball diamond backstop, water heaters, parking lot repairs, soccer nets, Gibson park light replacement, and Moloch garbage receptacles. So I don't know, Andy, do you want to touch on the parks plan now, or do we want to wait? So I will move to our next slide before we take any questions. Thanks, Jeff. So here we have 6 of our bridge structures that RCS is responsible for. The top middle, Oriole Street Bridge that we replaced in 2020. And of the 5 remaining bridges in this picture here, based on the 2019 OSIM bridge report, we have roughly $140,000 in repairs planned for the next 10 years. Next slide, please, Jeff. So here we have Hopewell Crossing Bridge. This is the latest addition to the RCS bridge fleet and our largest to date. So we will be inheriting this likely in the next year as well. And with that, actually, we'll continue on, Jeff. We'll get through trails as well. So Woolwich trails. Beginning with the spring lockdown, due to the pandemic, trails became ever important for the mental and physical health of Woolwich residents. Staff witnessed a significant increase in trail use in 2020, and we expect increased use to continue through 2021. RCS staff have increased the frequency of trail inspections and maintenance to ensure safe trails for increased usership. We have 120 kilometers of public trails that are available to Woolwich community at no cost. 48 kilometers are managed by community groups in the region, and 64 kilometers are managed and maintained by RCS staff. So with that, we'll take any questions on parks, cemeteries, and the trails operating budgets.
Any questions? Nope, not seeing any. Okay, carry on.
Okay, so next we'll move on, Jeff, to tweak trees for Woolwich and clean waterways. So we'll start with tree planting events. In 2020, 167 volunteers planted over 600 trees. In 2021, Tweak and Trees for Woolwich invite residents, community groups, businesses, and students to help plant in parks, open spaces, trails, waterways, as well as our business properties in the industrial lands. Tree care. In 2020, RCS staff were busy with tree care throughout the township. More than 200 hazard trees were cut and 510 trees pruned. A staff-led tree inventory and programs were run and will continue through 2021. And then lastly, tree watering. So tree watering continues to consume a great deal of staff time, believe it or not, at approximately 10 hours a week throughout the summer months. There were 100 plus trees planted in 2020 in parks, which will all require watering for the next 2 years. And lastly, the tree nursery. In 2020, 470 volunteer hours were logged at the tree nursery, where more than 2,000 trees are housed. 453 trees were harvested for tree planting events in 2020. And next slide, please, Jeff. On this next slide, Jeff, I don't know if you're able to play that video just while I speak. There shouldn't be any audio, so. Tweak and Trees for Woolwich have an exciting new habitat restoration project happening in Elmira in 2021, aptly named the Habitats. The project is planned for a 5-acre parcel of township land on the east side of Elmira, alongside the Lions Ring Trail and Tweak Tree Nursery. The plan includes the afforestation of 5 ecosystems to the pre-settlement state. Paths will wander through the site to guide visitors through the various ecosystems. Purposes of the habitats include habitat restoration, carbon sequestration, environmental education, hiking, and endangered species preservation. The habitat project will be funded with private donations in the RCS Tweak budget. The project has received a $6,000 donation so far in 2020, with additional commitments planned for the next 3 years at $8,000 each year. The estimated project total will come in around $75,000. So pretty cool, exciting project that Tweak has planned on the books. Yeah, so I will go one more slide, please, and thank you, Jeff. And then we will take some questions on the environmental piece. Environmental services. So Council has been provided the 2021 Climate Action Greening Infrastructure Reserve Fund Budget Issues paper. This paper outlines the 3 areas for spending of this reserve fund in 2021, which include the 2 EV charging stations, boulevard tree planting, and tree giveaway program. The township continues to partner with both Sustainable Waterloo Region and Climate Action Waterloo Region to establish region and corporate-wide greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets and strategies. Balancing the demands of these partnerships with implementation of strategies continues to be a challenge for RCS. The region and City of Waterloo and Kitchener have dedicated climate action-focused staffing resources with backgrounds in environmental management, while the surrounding townships contribute to the best of our abilities. Should Council wish to further invest in implementation of region-wide strategies, additional staffing resources may be required in 2022 and beyond. And then lastly, RCS plans to continue with investment in energy efficiencies through the capital budget, focusing on further hydro reductions through LED lighting retrofits at the WMC for the pool lighting, as well as all exterior lighting. And with that, we'll take any questions on Tweak, Trees for Woolwich, Clean Waterways, and environmental services items.
Any questions, Council? Councillor Schultz and then Ryan.
Yeah, thank you. Through you to Thomas. Going back to the tree watering, who does that? Is that a student that does that, or how do we take care of that?
Through you, Mayor Sean. So we have 2 seasonal staff, and they typically spend a half day to a full day, 1 day a week. So that's not something that Council is aware. That's not something that's built into, the Tweak budget or greening funds or any of those. That reserve fund. That's something that comes out of our operating, which in recent years has, it takes staff away from our other duties. So we are working in 2021 specifically to do some more naturalized areas within our parks, back of Bolander Park, the area that doesn't see a lot of use, and then some other green spaces throughout the township so that the watering requirements aren't quite as intensive. When we plant, larger caliber trees in parks that are highly visible, we can't just leave them and not water them, right? We have to, do our best to keep them alive. So.
Yeah, if I could just follow up. So does that take special equipment, a special vehicle and a tank on the back of the truck? Is that why we can't use a student for something like that?
Yeah, so through you, Mayor Sean. So they are students that we bring on, and we do use a tank on the back of a trailer for that. But yeah, it is, believe it or not, it's extremely hard on our vehicles as well too. We go through breaks on that vehicle quite often in the summer months as well.
Okay. Councillor Ryan.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Johns. Through you to Thomas. Just as a follow-up on Larry's last question, I have some other questions, but I was wondering, do you put the watering bags on a lot of these trees, or does that only last a couple of days?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Sean. So yeah, that's what we do. We have watering bags we put on all of our new trees, and they get watered every other week for 2 years typically.
Okay. Now, I guess my first comment is that habitats, I'd heard about it, but I hadn't seen the diagram before. That looks like a really cool project, and I think that would be something excellent for the township as a bit of a little, I don't know, tourist destination or something. I think a lot of people will get a kick out of that. But my question is about the park study plan. I like that you said in-house. Can you tell me what that will entail? Is that something you are taking on, or is it a couple of different staff members from planning, or how do you see that park plan coming about?
Yeah, so Anne, just feel free to jump in whenever you'd like, but we plan to work with John Scarfone to handle that. He has some time that he's able to contribute, and our department would fund that. As I mentioned, when we take on new parks and developments, they're handed over to us with no amenities. And the public that's moving into those neighborhoods, wondering why there's not a playground, why there's no trails, that sort of thing. So yeah, so what we need is some guidance as a department, as opposed to Anne and I making those decisions. Yeah, Anne, jump in.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just wanted 2 comments. So the first one I wanted to note before we moved on from Tweak, and that they are going to come back with a presentation to council later in January, because they are doing so much amazing work. And we're doing our best to give them justice tonight, but they do have some really interesting projects. So Anne and that group are going to come forward and just provide some more detail on some of those things that we were talking about tonight. And then just to follow up on the question about the study. So as he noted, yeah, John is going to lend some expertise to us. It is modernization money that we're hoping to use. And I guess, where we keep leaning is that we want a council approved kind of policy and strategy to help with the long-term budget, right, for all of these new wood lots and parks that he spoke to. And ultimately, it's the capital replacement that becomes a challenge down the road for us. So we're kind of looking for a document, right, that will build a strong forward-thinking policy that council can establish the priorities that when we're building these out. And it's kind of similar to the work that we would have done on the topsoil depths, the tree planting guideline and the replacement for trees. And that's what we're kind of looking at, is that instead of doing it piece by piece, and every time a new subdivision comes through and we approve a park, and sometimes you'll know it's there or not know it's there, instead of doing kind of ad hoc, that will have a bit of a vision, a bit of a 5-year plan, and have a more holistic view of what those outdoor amenities are going to look like. What can we afford? What can we fund? Where should they be? What is council's service level and standard for the distance to the next open space? And ultimately too is looking strategically at all the spaces that we have and the right use for that. So is there properties that are originally or coming on as parkland that could potentially be used for housing, or are there other things that we can do? Could it be, do we want more dog parks? What is it the council wants to see? Because those expectations are there of those communities as they grow, which we both know in Elmira and Breslau are seeing, tremendous growth. They're asking what's coming in here. So is our policy that we're going to have the developer do it and reduce the amount of park space in return? How are we going to work that through? So yeah, so, and we've talked about, there are a number of potential areas that are coming on in the next 2021 and 2022 that are quite substantial in size. And we just would like to be a little more organized and strategic in how we're going to develop those properties. So with that, I take any questions.
Thank you. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. It's tough with the screen being shared. I can't see. I can only see about 4 people on the bottom of my screen.
You should be able to slide that over.
Yeah, I'm trying to slide back between you and Ann. You're on opposite ends of the spectrum. One of the things that we heard recently in council chambers, digitally, virtually, was the people in Winterburn saying that they don't have any recreational facilities. And there's a bridge there that they use for recreation. And they're saying if we take that away, they don't have anything. With growth being concentrated in Breslau and Elmira, some happening in St. Jacobs, would this parks plan that you're talking about help us get an understanding of the ongoing maintenance costs with added parks in the growth areas compared to places like Conestoga and Maryhill and Heidelberg that don't have any growth? Would this be encapsulated in something like that, where we could have an intentional understanding of where we're spending our recreational dollars, and if they're getting if it's getting too lopsided between development areas?
I'm sure you, Madam Mayor. I think that's certainly a valid point that we could put into the scope of work that we're moving forward with.
Does that answer your question?
Sure.
Anyone else? Okay, Marion?
Next slide, please, Jeff, and I think it's either Anne or Jen.
I think I'll speak to this one and then Jen. So just briefly want to touch on the different settlement community centers. As we all know, they are and remain an important link in an outreach to rural communities. Lots of challenges, of course, with COVID, that all sites have remained closed since March. The budgets here are highly dependent on provincial restrictions and aren't apt to open to program or facility rentals until we return to the orange level. No major improvements to the facilities that are being proposed, nor are there enhancements to the budget. So here we did have to do some cost containment in 2020 and anticipate that again in 2021. Just in December of this past year, the Bloomingdale Rec Association, which is one of the strongest ones around, has turned back operations of the facility itself to the township. And so we're seeing that the recreation associations are still vital. They're still, but it's a shift in function, right? So they're taking on more kind of a fundraising. They're doing community events and helping us continue to be a link with those communities, but not so much the hard service of looking after, maintaining, and servicing those community centers. That function now for all of the facilities is back with the township. So additionally, the township has assumed some turf, right? So Maryhill, we've got 9 acres, Breslau 17 acres, and Bloomingdale, I'm not sure what the number is, that we're now looking after. So as I noted, program and fitness opportunities, we did try to do a few in the fall and they were pretty successful based on the capacities, but once again, we paused that and don't anticipate that we'll reopen it in red, but wait till we're in orange. I think that's all I have to add about that. So we can probably move to the next slide. And Jen's gonna chat here.
Thank you. As mentioned previously, most of our community outreach and events for 2020 were done virtually through Instagram, Facebook, and the Woolwich Stay Home, Stay Active page on our website. Canada Day was a Facebook event, and we had music and crafts, science experiments. You could see the balloon lady teaching people how to make balloon animals. There were also activity kits that could be picked up at the Woolwich Memorial Center, and those activities were streamed throughout the day to give people an opportunity to hop on or hop off, and then were available on the YouTube channel after. We also had Grow with Woolwich and Christmas events. There was a DIY pallet tree that people could pick up, Christmas activity kits, coloring art and story contest, and the Heidelberg Recreation Association Santa Parade that was held. The Stay Active page itself was committed to helping our community stay engaged and active during the pandemic. And some of the areas of the focus for this page included seasonal activities, fitness, crafts, games, recipes, and community resources. We had some of our day camp staff actually cook online and videotape themselves making cakes and things. Staff continue to update the page with new and exciting activities, and we've even received a few emails from some of our residents with their kids recommending some sites for us to check out and add. In 2021, we will be continuing to offer existing community-wide events based on successful grant applications. Staff will be exploring opportunities to offer educational sessions for community members focusing on inclusion and diversity. These sessions will be done in partnership with organizations and groups that focus on various social and ethnic backgrounds. We do anticipate in 2021 that our events will continue to run virtually, but feel that these events, no matter how they look, will continue to focus on enhancing community capacity and building a sense of belonging. Is there any questions on that slide at all?
Councilmember Monahan, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I didn't have my mute on and I just cleared my throat. Sorry. Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Ms. Horndal, I'm just wondering if you could give us an idea of how many people are participating in the virtual programs and the events that you put on.
Through you, Madam Mayor. We did some insights looking at the use on the hits on those pages, or sorry, on that page. And it's very interesting. There's a big spike in April, May, and then it goes down and no one uses it. And then there was a big spike again in December. So we've hit just, I think, over 3,000 hits on it, which we're pretty happy with. I do know we went through, I believe there were about 60 pallet trees and I believe about 100 Christmas activity kits that were picked up as well. So the word is getting out there, and I know we've gotten really good traction on our Instagram and Facebook. Those have really taken up as well.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else?
Next slide, please, Jeff.
Welcome back, Councilor Redcliffe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I wanted to touch briefly on summer camp. It was the first program that we restarted during the initial lockdown. And although recreation facilities at that time remained closed, camp programs were able to operate under strict protocols with a maximum facility capacity of 50. We met as staff and we really felt that camp is an important service as it not only provides support for parents throughout the summer months, but it also contributes to a child's social, mental, and physical well-being, which was especially important this past summer. A note that we were successful in 2020 with the Canada Summer Jobs Grant for summer camp staff at approximately $23,000. Staff worked with a regional group at the onset to establish safety protocols in adherence with public health and provincial guidelines and to ensure a consistency in protocols and required documentation. Staff successfully implemented 9 weeks of summer camp for children ages 5 to 10 at the Woolwich Memorial Centre and 7 weeks at the Breslau Community Centre between July 6th and September 4th. And although camp looked very different this year, it was still a huge success. Some of the challenges we faced this year included smaller group ratios with designated indoor and outdoor spaces for each group and a separate washroom. Each camp group also had to maintain their own bubble and could not interact with the other camp groups throughout the day. So we had each group rotating through different activity zones throughout the day. They couldn't meet or talk. We had enhanced cleaning protocols that were developed, including items such as program equipment, program supplies, touch points, washroom facilities, tables, and chairs. We had staggered drop-off and pickup locations for each group. Parents were not allowed inside the facility. Leaders were required to wear a mask for safety throughout the whole summer. Masks were not mandatory at that time for campers, although some parents chose to send their children with masks. There was mandatory online screening completed for each child every day prior to each day of camp, including temperature checks. Each child was provided with their own supplies and a hula hoop to be used throughout the week to define their space, ensure social distancing, and discouraging the sharing of resources. And you can see a picture of the setup on the slide. It was probably the cleanest, tidiest camp we ever had. So I think we're going to keep the hula hoops. They were great. Our summer camp program is typically built around weekly field trips and daily pool use, which unfortunately, due to the protocols, we were not allowed to do this year. So camp staff were required to be very creative on providing enjoyable experiences in the facility. Kids still did crafts, science experiments, nature walks. They had water days. We had lots of great virtual guest speakers. The kids walked to the splash pad once or twice a week. And I would like to take the time right now to commend Marie Malcolm, our Community Development and Inclusion Coordinator, and our entire camp staff team for their creativity, their can-do attitude, their energy, and their enthusiasm. They took on the challenge of the first ever COVID protocol program And it was very, very daunting at the beginning, but they certainly made an amazing year to remember. And the children that attended certainly benefited. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions? No, not seeing any.
Okay, thank you.
To the next slide, please, Jeff. Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. So next we'll move on to facility management and infrastructure renewal. So often skewed by the name of the department, Recreation and Community Services is responsible for much more than parks and playgrounds. One of the department's top focuses is facility management and renewal of capital infrastructure at all 31 township facilities, from libraries and administration building, rental facilities, fire stations to public works yards. Management continues to focus on building out a solid 5-year capital plan, informed by building condition assessments, monthly facility inspections, and an annual capital tour. The majority of unionized frontline staff time is spent on facility preventative maintenance. On a day-to-day basis, staff deal with everything from changing light bulbs and greasing pumps to emergency ammonia leaks and bridge repairs. Staff respond to corporate-wide service requests from all departments, often dealing with competing operational and emergency repair priorities. The department prides itself on the appearance and upkeep of our facilities. The WMC is 11 years old and looks as it did the day we opened in September of 2009. So with that, this concludes the operations budget, and we're happy to take any questions.
Councilor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. Through you to Thomas. The administration building, you just mentioned that you do a lot of planning and forecasting and such. And I'm wondering if you can tell me what the plan is, you know, even in the next 5 years for the capacity of the admin building. Seems like the last time I was in, well, that was a long time ago, actually. But the engineering infrastructure department seemed like people were they're very close together and kind of on top of each other. And even in this budget, they're looking for more staffing. What at some point there won't be able to fit any more people in the building. So what would the timeline be on that?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So that's a good question. And Annie or SMT, feel free to jump in whenever. But I think that for the next 5 years, based on that capital plan, there won't be any changes with that facility at all. Beyond that, Annie, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, thanks. Through you, Madam Mayor. So part of discussions that we'll talk about during capital is major capital facilities. And in there, Mr. Poupé with Infrastructure Services has a plan that they want to evaluate all of their locations and their sites. So part of that will be, if they're in as a strategy long-term, so we'll start with an environmental assessment, but in 5 years from now, if they, we have to construct a facility perhaps in Breslau, would we look at having some engineering staff located as part of that? So I think that'll be part of that environmental assessment moving forward. And I see that David's popped on, so he might, or Jared may want to add to that conversation.
David?
Yeah, I think we have to remember that the administration building in its whole and in its entirety still has sections of that building, i.e. the second floor, where there is space. So to the concern, I think it's just about how we best utilize all of the space that's available. I think the other thing that may not have been mentioned when Mr. Pomponi talked about the digitization project that we look to accomplish under the use of modernization funding. There are sections of the building that will be able to be freed up from certainly a record standpoint that may be able to be used as suitable office space or even meeting space from that standpoint, and convert some of the meeting to office space. So that's what I wanted to contribute is that there is space within the broader building. Certainly, Councillor Merlehan, it is correct that there is that there is space that constraints in some of the areas, but I think we have to look at a holistic plan for expansion throughout the admin building.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
So I guess with that, if there's no further questions, we'll move on to Jeff. If you could pull up the capital budget for us, please, and thank you.
While you're doing that, I'll just add a couple of comments in, and that's to say a big thank you to you, Anne, and to your staff, and Thomas and Jen as well. You know, the pandemic's been tough on all of us, and we've all had to, I hate to use the word pivot, it's way overused, but especially in your area, you're very public facing, and so just the way you've come through it and been able to provide services to the residents and you know, the kids, and to keep some kind of semblance of order in our programs and in our facilities has been remarkable. So thank you.
Anne, are you going to lead us off?
Yeah, sorry, I had to get to move a couple screens around there. So just, we just go back one page, please, Jeff, one slide. So I just want to talk, kind of give a little bit of an overview, and then Thomas is going to go through and provide some detail on the different areas. So once again, capital for us includes fleet management, parks infrastructure, facility and property management, and then there's capital projects and major capital projects. So I know that we talk a lot, and you know, our name is recreation, but really the capital component is a significant part of our department. But $3 million annually in projects, in addition to $4 million in an operating budget. So there's significant project management and oversight on Thomas and myself and that side of that team. So, you know, some of the work involves site plan process, design work, building permits, and working with third-party funders on great amenities that they help install in some of our parks. So, and you know, on the coordination of services. So it's a busy role. We did pause and delay and defer some projects this year, both because of a resource capacity and you know, just in terms of budget mitigation pressures and budget pressures. So some of those projects you'll see have been carried forward to 2021, pausing from 2022. So we're going to walk through, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I'll actually jump forward 2 slides now, Jeff. Okay, so through you, Madam Mayor, I will walk us through our capital budget for parks first, and then move on to property maintenance, and finally major. I will touch on those projects that are new or those that are a little less self-explanatory. So beginning with Bolander Park erosion mitigation. So the waterway that winds through Bolander Park is eroding the parkland south of the creek. RCS has retained a consultant to assess stabilization of the creek and provide design recommendation, and that happened in 2017. We have since applied for funding through the Great Lakes Local Action Fund to complete restoration work based on this design brief. Tennis court resurfacings. So as council may have witnessed in 2020, the recently resurfaced backcourt in Gibson Park has seen incredible use, likely enhanced by the pandemic. Staff are more than pleased with the work that was done by the contractor, and plan to proceed with resurfacings of the courts in Snyder Park, located in St. Jacobs, as well as Breslau Memorial Park. Courts will include pickleball and tennis lines, as well as multi-court lines in Breslau. And we are getting lots and lots of requests for pickleball lines all throughout the township, so we will be putting in lines and netting at Mary Hill as well too, for a group there that's pushing for that. Conestoga Park picnic shelter. Staff plan to replace this aging structure and cracked concrete pad, similar to what we have installed in Gibson Park or Breslau Memorial, to complement the new playground. Gibson accessible washroom. This washroom replacement project will be carried forward from 2020 to 2021. RCS, IS, and DS staff have dealt with significant hurdles for implementation of this project regarding the connection of the new facility to existing sanitary infrastructure. Despite delays in 2020, this project is planned for construction in early 2021 with hopes of a grand opening in the spring or early summer. Heidelberg Park fencing. The department is limited to which ball diamonds are rentable to our adult user groups based on size, proximity to residences, and lighting. Diamonds currently in use by these groups include those in Breslau, Bloomingdale, St. Jacobs, Elmira, and Heidelberg. Previously, we had intended on revitalizing the diamond in Conestoga, however, have since shifted our focus to Heidelberg due to proximity of the homes in Conestoga. As a result, in 2020, we moved these rentals to Heidelberg. The ball diamond and tennis courts at Heidelberg require new fencing due to poor condition, with plans to address the lighting in the 5-year forecast as well. Of the township's 34 parks, and despite the new playground in Heidelberg, the remainder of the park is extremely tired. We plan to replace all fencing with our 10-foot standard. Next slide, please, Jeff. So here we have the Backcourt at Gibson, which is just wonderful. If you haven't been out there to check it out, it's well worth the time. And the Conestoga picnic shelter as well. Next slide, please, Jeff. So next we will move on to the trail bridge replacement. So there's a section of the Health Valley Trail that follows the Conestoga River from St. Jacobs to University Ave. And it contains a footbridge that was washed out and damaged during the spring thaw in 2020. RCS closed the bridge at that time and struggled to enforce the closure through the summer due to increased trail usership and considering this is a link to the city of Waterloo. At that time, staff retained consultants to provide cost proposals on design of a new structure, coming in at approximately $18,000. Through further discussion with IS staff, it is anticipated that replacement of the structure would land upwards of $100,000. This bridge, similar to many others throughout the township, was graciously installed by a volunteer group one weekend and later assumed by the Township of Woolwich. Of note, however, is that the Health Valley Trail is located on private property from the highway to University Ave, for private landowners in the city of Waterloo. RCS currently has agreements in place with each of the owners for trail use. As a department, we understand the importance of permanently securing use of this land prior to proceeding with spending on the design phase. Despite longstanding existing agreements with the landowners, the current agreements would not precede a new or existing owner from preventing access. As such, RCS plans to proceed with landowner discussions to attempt to secure recreation easements, and if this can be achieved, RCS will then move forward with the design work in 2021. And then lastly, playground replacements. So we plan to continue with replacements of Hopewell Park and Conestoga Park playgrounds, one of which was deferred from 2020. Both of these parks are currently inaccessible and do not meet AODA standards. Of the township's 20 playgrounds, after 2021, 15 will have been replaced in recent years. And of the 5 remaining, RCS plans to address these within the next 3 years. Once complete, council will not see any further proposed renewals until approximately 2030. And with that, we'll take any questions on parks capital items.
Councillor Shantz, and then Marlahan.
Thank you. Through you to Thomas, you answered a couple of my questions already. The one being the Heidelberg and the future lighting there. And I didn't realize that we were moving some activity there from previous years. I thought it wasn't very well used, so I was surprised to see that. But I'm glad to hear that the reason why. The other question I have is playgrounds seem to be all over the map, from $40,000 to $100,000. And what signifies what you spend and why are some so expensive and other ones not?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. So last year, Floridale was under budgeted, and we tendered both of the playground replacements in Heidelberg and Floridale together, and we received 2 submissions. Both submissions did come in right around the same price. And when you take both of those playgrounds, the cost of both, and put them together, I believe that we were approximately $8,000 over budget. we've seen a bit of an increase in playgrounds, and we have budgeted accordingly for 2021. Hopewell is a significant sized playground, much larger than Conestoga. Reason for the bit of a difference there between the two. But I think that this year we're in a much better position to, to offer, replacement value for what was there previously. Heidelberg Rec Association was able to contribute a bit in Heidelberg because the initial designs that came back were lacking some features. Yeah, so hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. And
Just a second, did you want to jump in?
Through you, Madam Mayor, just quick, and just to add on what Thomas said is, yeah, it's typically like for like. Whatever's existing, we replace with similar structure, unless perhaps the community or one of the associations come forward. As he noted, Heidelberg did, and I think Bloomingdale had supported some amendments or additions last year, and Maryhill previous to that. So that's the only time we really will enhance a playground. Or Lions Park, significant donation came in for that. So we'll include that into the project.
Question? Go ahead.
yeah, I have a couple more if I may. So I was surprised with the Health Valley Trail, and you said $100,000 for the bridge, and previous to that, a couple of people just built one on a weekend. So what's the difference?
Yeah, so what's in place currently was, like I said, graciously, put up with a group of gentlemen in the Lions Club over the weekend, I think 10 years ago or so. Unfortunately, from a liability perspective, it doesn't quite meet the standard. What we try to install now, is a bridge that's going to last, an asset that's going to last longer than 10 years, typically an eagle span bridge. Yeah, so there are significant costs there. And as I'd mentioned, we will need to revisit this project for sure. We wanted to get something in the books for 2021 should we, secure easements with the private landowners. Annie, feel free to jump in.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think I just wanted to add, I think there is a picture of the bridge in a couple slides ahead. It might be good to show council what we're looking at. It's not a huge span, but there certainly would be some engineering work that would need to be done.
Doesn't look that bad.
If I don't want to see it replaced over the weekend, any of you, so don't get any ideas, Larry, whether it's your equipment. With that, I think I'm not sure if we have to work through conservation to get some approvals, but there would be some guidelines that we would have to follow. And Jared, probably don't look at this bridge, Jared.
Your bridges are a lot cheaper than Jared's, so you're good.
I'll take his $4 million.
Yeah. Any other questions? Go ahead, Councillor Shantz, and then Councillor Ryan. You can jump in.
Okay, then one last question. I noticed that the washrooms at Gibson Park went up by, I think, 25%. And what's the reason for that?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. So we have jumped through, there's been a number of hurdles with that project. We are moving the washroom so that it's not tucked in the forest, just from a safety perspective and accessibility perspective. So it is being moved out into the park, and connecting to our sanitary is proving much more costly than we originally anticipated. We're not able to tie right into First Street due to the depths of the sanitary line. So we're, having to run down the sidewalk to the existing sanitary. So with that, the contractors had to go back 3 times to have engineering drawings revised, all prior to us receiving site plan approval. So now that that piece is complete, we're finally able to move forward. And Anne, I don't know if you want to touch on Kate's cause and the funding and that.
Yeah, I can just add a little bit to that through you, Madam Mayor, and that it is primarily funded through the third party there are some additional costs with engineering and I guess some additional costs when we got to the site plan and they went back. Certainly materials have increased right through the pandemic and the cost of the wood and et cetera. So we're working through that with the group to address those funding concerns. So.
Okay, I assume we're going under the sidewalk. Thanks.
Councilor Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I have a couple points here. The first, I was going to talk about the Heidelberg fencing there for this year and the lighting for next. And when you look at the expected revenue, it's $2,000. And I think we talked about this before, that there was basically one Waterloo men's beer league that was renting the space in Heidelberg. I guess I'm wondering about the space in Conestoga and the difference, or the reason, I guess, for moving to Heidelberg rather than Conestoga. And I guess I would like to know, what are the plans then for that space that would be left over in Conestoga? Maybe you could answer that first.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. So a few different answers there. In 2020, we did move the adult rentals to Heidelberg. However, due to the pandemic, that didn't last long. We are still able to host our minor ball players in Conestoga. And the reason for the move is the proximity of the homes along the third baseline and issues with, balls flying into those residences there. So health and safety concern there. As well, Heidelberg Lighting is that and Gibson tennis courts are probably in the poorest shape throughout the township. So we would need to look to replace those in the next 5 years. We have previously, 2 years back, we did receive through tender costing over $200,000 for the lighting at Lions Park. And I'm looking into other options for cheaper alternatives for Heidelberg. And I feel like I'm missing one question that you may have had.
I was wondering about the repurposing of the park, but I guess I misunderstood that. I thought that maybe you were removing the baseball diamond altogether. Would it not be cheaper to just put up very large netting at the end of Conestoga and leave that as an adult baseball diamond and remove Heidelberg altogether? I was going to suggest you could repurpose the fencing in Heidelberg and leave have a dog park or something like that in there, just because that space is pretty cramped in Heidelberg and there isn't really much in the way of open space. Kind of cuts off where the diamond is to where the other things are in the park. So we are still going to maintain the two ball diamonds then?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, that's correct. The fencing in Heidelberg, we would need to look to replace it, within 5 years, as well as the light towers, just because of how poor condition they're in. And, this kind of takes us back to our operating and minor capital with the parks plan, where these are great questions that you're raising. And, staff here, chatting with our allocations staff and, looking at what our best options are, we've landed on Heidelberg in moving those adult groups there.
And I guess just the final on Heidelberg is this something that we could push off a year until the parks plan is done and actually speak to the people of Heidelberg about the use? If the leagues that are that are renting the space are, from out of the area and they're Waterloo leagues, I'm not sure Woolwich subsidizing that kind of use if it's not if it's not being used in particularly for our own residents, then maybe the residents in Heidelberg would prefer the space being used for something else, and maybe we would find that out through the parks plan. Just before we invest $275,000 in the next year. Maybe they just want all pickleball courts or something there. I don't know. But I would probably be in favor of just putting the fencing off another year and having that plan in place before that decision was made. The other question I had about the Bloomingdale parking lot, did that go up $50,000? I kind of recall that being a $150,000 job, and I just noticed it was $200,000, and that could just be me misremembering. But it just seems like an awful lot for a parking lot for a small community center.
Ms. MacArthur, go ahead, Ann.
Yeah, you're right that you're correct in that the numbers have gone up, and I think some of those numbers, and I'm going to ask Jared to pop on here, just came when they. I'm not sure if he's there or not. When they came to revisiting the design, the costs were higher than, and I think it was initially a budget in 2017. Is that right, Jared? And these are 2020 numbers.
Yeah, sorry, through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Merlihan. It's true. Originally, when we estimated the costs, we were into $150,000, and that money was set aside. And then as it progressed through the design with the region of Waterloo, those numbers did increase. And it wasn't until we actually got through to the final design, which is shown in our 2021 capital budget. It's included in there. Those numbers are at about $250,000 for that paving. Now, appreciating that is a construction cost estimate, and it will be determined what the actual cost is when that does go to tender. But what's really driving some of that cost is some of the comments that we received from the GRCA. There were some concerns about the redirection of drainage, just the additional drainage that would be flowing from that parking lot. So there was some attenuation. There was some look at the entranceway features too. So again, I just want to let council know that at the time of the original budget, we didn't have all of these details. Now we feel more comfortable, at least at the higher level, and we certainly wouldn't expect it to be more. And we would obviously see what the construction comes back in at the tender time, but it has increased.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Carolyn?
Next slide, please, Jeff. So next we'll move on to capital property maintenance projects. Significant focus in 2021 on non-recreation related facility capital renewal projects. Previously identified through budget containment measures, and due to the amount of time spent on the pandemic, as Anne has mentioned previously, certain projects were deferred. And again, I'll be highlighting only those projects that require further explanation, but you're free to ask any questions. So we'll jump right to the Elmira Fire Station renovation. Staff plan to renovate the washroom and shower areas and office and meeting room space. These areas of the facility have seen no capital investment since the addition was constructed in 1970. As discussed briefly Tuesday evening, despite previous plans for a future fire station build on the Church Street lot in Elmira, both RCS and fire services staff feel a freshening up of the current facility, and future addition plans similar to that in Maryhill will address the department's needs for the future. Next slide, please, Jeff. There we just have an image of the Elmira Fire Hall on the inside. Next slide, please. So a bit of a highlight from this year. RCS invested approximately $150,000 in renovating the Conestoga Operations Garage in 2020, with work including insulating the entire facility, new exterior cladding, windows, bay and man doors, and a renovation of the interior lunchrooms and washroom. 2021 plans include the install of an exhaust system and emergency lighting. Considering the facility is 100 years old, we anticipate significant savings in natural gas as a result of the reno. And additionally, considering the previous conditions of the interior facilities, infrastructure services staff are extremely pleased with the upgrades. Next slide, please, Jeff. And then I will touch on WMC refrigeration plant improvements. Staff have allocated funding for initial design work for the potential replacement of the refrigeration plant at the WMC, should the township be awarded grant funding through the ICIP. And with that, we will take any questions on property maintenance capital projects.
Any questions, Council? Councilor Ryan?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz, to Thomas. I think I was talking to you, Thomas, sometime in the summer about the cogen plant and the fence. And I think at the time you said that there was going to be a 10-foot fence or something that went around the cogen plant, and it was going to be installed like 2 weeks from our conversation. I haven't seen the fence yet, but I'm just wondering if there's a story behind that and when we can expect to see that.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. So our fencing contractor is a little slow, but he assured me last week that it will be happening in January.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay.
Okay, next slide, please. So final slide, we will move on to major facilities. So we have an award report for architectural design services coming before council on January 19th. Staff note that due to increased construction costs as a result of the pandemic, amongst design changes from the initial proposed design in 2019, based on discussions with outside engineering consultants, RCS is anticipating the possibility of funding in excess of the allocated $850 may be required. Following the design and construction tendering phases, staff will have a more wholesome sense of the project totals, and if required, we'll bring a further recommendation before council at that time. So with that, that concludes the capital project portion. I'm happy to provide any further clarification if need be.
Any other questions, Council, on Council Ryan?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz, to Thomas or Ann, I guess. Going back to the Elmira Fire Station, I think on Tuesday you mentioned that you were talking about a 10-year lifespan, I guess, on the current fire station with these additions, or is it longer than that? Is it possible that the Howard Street location will be the be all and end all of where the Elmira Fire Station is going to end up?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So I guess I'll answer in two parts. So first being the current facility, we foresee fire being there for the long term based on discussions with the Elmira Fire Station staff. It really needs a refresh on the inside. As I mentioned, it's 50 years old and hasn't been touched. There's no insulation in that part of the building. So we would like to invest, to provide that for the fire staff that work out of there. And then, based on the plans that have been put forth for Maryhill, these staff there are more than pleased with what we're going to be moving forward with. And as Ann mentioned as well, the Elmira fire staff, we have discussed with them in addition on the back of the building, as there's a great deal of space out the back for an additional bay, to add in bunker room space, showers, that sort of thing. So we do foresee that building serving the department in town for 10 plus years.
Annie?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Thanks for those comments. And we're certainly open to have some discussions. But I think it might be important for Chief Martin to maybe just reconfirm some comments that we're talking about. I think we feel it's important to move forward with something to support that department. But maybe you wanted to speak about long-term, Dale.
Go ahead, Chief.
Yeah, okay. Through you, Madam Mayor. As you're well aware of, we were looking at building a new station. However, that just seems to get pushed off and pushed off just because of the funding. So the times come when we have to do something because of the number of manpower we have and the room that we have. So this would really be our best option, I believe, if we could do some renovations to it, plus add a bay onto the, I guess it'd be the north side of the building. It's just too tight right now with the number of trucks that we have there. So if we could get a bay built and do some renovations as far as the training room goes, it's much too small right now. So if we get that done, I could see it being more long-term, but we have to move forward with something. It's just getting too tight.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to close out, and then David looks like he's going to probably add some comments. I think it goes back to conversations we've had when we're talking about bridge replacement, with all the in terms of infrastructure challenges that not just fire has, or not just our department, but the entire township faces. And every time we have these budget discussions internally and what we're going to bring forward, we just continue to be challenged with those dollars, right? And putting our best foot forward and what we can make the best recommendation for council to make an informed decision. But I'll leave it at that. And maybe David, if you wanted to add your comments, and we can go from there.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Annie. The only thing I wanted to add was the fact that, a number of years ago, thanks to our former manager of planning, John Scarfone, and our fire chief for the day, Rick Peterson, there was some forethought in terms of looking at the Lunar subdivision and part of our fire master plan, looking for an appropriate location. So obviously we were able to secure that lot in the Lunar subdivision. One of the things we are also exploring that hasn't been raised is, with the availability of that lot, if this is the direction that we go, will there be an opportunity for the municipality to do something with that lot, maybe in the area of affordable housing or affordable housing units, and what that may look like. But in fairness, what we're doing and have asked staff to do is research the actual terms and conditions under which we acquired the lot. But I did just want to throw that into the mix because, from a holistic standpoint, certainly it was the right decision many years ago to have some forethought on, hey, if we were moving the station, where would it go to, and securing the lot. However, with the evolution of time and further input of the folks at the Elmira Fire Station about what could be done there, maybe, just maybe, with some further research and analysis, we could be solving two priorities for the municipality. One, to make sure we have an appropriate Elmira Fire Station that our volunteer firefighters can function out of, and also the fact about the ability to provide some sort of opportunity where we could go out to the not-for-profit community with some sort of affordable housing proposal. So that's in the early stage of investigation, but I did want to make sure from a transparency standpoint that that was something that we were making council aware of, that we're doing some research and homework on.
Okay, that's kind of where I was thinking about that property in the Lunar subdivision. And just to remind you, in 2015, it was both the Elmira Ward 1 councillors that thought that the Howard Street location was the best location. And so I fully support renovating that, and I've been in there. It's needed doing for a long time. So I'm glad that this year we're going to actually tackle that project and make sure our Elmira firefighters are treated to some better accommodations there. So I do like the option of looking at affordable housing. I'm wondering, in the meantime, is that a location that we could offer as like public garden space. Just seems like more people are getting into gardenings, and there has been some space lost when the skate park came up. If that's something that's completely temporary, just over the seasons, if that could be looked at.
Sure. I mean, we can throw that into the mix, and again, as part of looking at us owning the lot, what exactly could be an appropriate, as you know, interim use. Sure, we can look at it.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor McMillan? And then Councillor Shantz, was your hand up, or were you just stretching? Yes, okay. Councillor McMillan and then Shantz.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz, through you. So could I just get a little bit of clarity? Are we saying that the best option for the fire department and the township as a whole is to do this renovation? Or are we saying that this is the best plan that we think we have a chance to get approved by council? Like, our firefighters risk their lives for the people that they serve. And I don't know if I could in good conscience say, well, this option is going to be cheaper, so let's do that one. I agree with Councilor Merlehan. Adding affordable housing would be ideal, and whether that lot works or not, we got to find other ways to be creative about affordable housing. But when my house is on fire, I don't want a guy driving here who I said, yeah, you can make do with that shoddy old building. Like, I want a guy that's taken care of. If anybody in our township deserves to be taken care of, it's those guys. So I just like to know, do we think when this building is renovated, that's going to be, a good place for our firefighters to work out of? Or are we saying, we're reading the tea leaves on this council and we think that this is the best that we could possibly do, because what we should do, we're never going to get it approved?
Well, I would like for Annie and Dale to jump in, but my understanding, when this was brought up as part of this year's budget process, was there was extensive consultation with the Elmira station. I believe Annie or Thomas mentioned that, when things were reevaluated, that this was deemed to be an appropriate move forward, and that this station could be brought up to appropriate standards. And perhaps Annie or Dale can comment, no, not dissimilar to the fact that, as council knows, we took a good hard look at an old building, i.e. the Maryhill Fire Station. And structural engineers said, no, you can work with this and you can modernize it and you can expand it. So I believe it's within that realm, but Annie and Dale, perhaps you can speak to that further.
Yeah, I can speak to that. After some discussion with the firefighters in Elmira, I think it is probably the best plan to move forward with. They were apprehensive in moving in the first place. However, what we're planning to do to the old station, I think, will just make it every bit as good as a brand new station. Because we do need more training room. However, there's ways and means that we can expand the training room into the old fire hall as long as we build another bay out the back. So yeah, I think we can make it that they'll be very happy with staying at that location.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Chief Martin, because I think, I've taken some shots at folks for being cheap, and I think some of them were justified and some of them were probably a little bit, pot shoddy and uncalled for. But I think if we're talking about our firefighters here, let's make sure that they're looked after and taken care of. And I think this council would certainly, I don't think you're going to have the trouble getting votes from this council to take care of our firefighters.
Yeah. And I think part of the reason is too, if we could get it sooner than later, if we get this pushed off 10 years, well, that's not going to make very happy firefighters.
Thank you.
Councillor Shantz and then Martin, and then I'll get back to you, Councillor Monahan.
Just a quick comment. Scott, if your house is on fire, you don't want them hanging around the fire station because they like it there. Question I have is, I thought Mary Hill Fire was 750, or is that, or am I wrong? And is it the 850, is that the increase, or we're going to increase it even more?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So it was budgeted for $700,000 over 2 years, and pushing everything forward a year. For next year, we have added 150, so we are at 850. Even with that number, as we go to tender, we're going to get a better idea of where we land. The design has somewhat changed from the original plans in 2019 based on using the existing building. So now we're adding a bay to the left when you're looking at the building. So yeah, we're trying to, I would say as a department, we're trying to, get as much value out of the renovation as possible and do, our best to, satisfy the needs of the department, but also, I don't want to use the word frugal, but, yeah, get as much value.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that my memory was correct because I thought it was lower than that originally.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you. When it comes to the Elmira Fire Station, it is very tight. And if you increase the training room and make it twice as big, and you own it, and you're putting in new washrooms and showers, and you're only putting in one bay, net space you gain nothing. Why don't you put on 2 bays while you're at it?
Yeah.
To me, it doesn't make sense because 1 bay is not going to cut it.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So yeah, it will be a similar design kind of process as Mary Hill has been. There is a good chance that we may need to add a bay plus space for bunker gear, showers, that sort of thing. I don't imagine it will be just the addition of a bay, maybe, slightly more than that, but that's something that we'll have to work through, using the space that's available, what can go where, that sort of thing at the time.
Another question?
No, I might have a comment later.
Okay. I think we're back to Councillor Monahan, if I didn't leave anybody out.
Okay, yeah, I kind of wanted to respond to Councillor McMillan a little bit. I would invite him to look at the 2015 Fire Master Plan update and look at the justifications there. That Fire Master update didn't convince myself or former Councillor Hahn that moving from Howard Street to the Lunar subdivision, it was basically a toss-up, and it's not a decision based on money or anything like that. I was for renovating the Howard Street station back then, and I seem to be the one that gets the shots across the bow about being cheap. I'm just asking questions, and that's why I signed up for this job, making sure that the money that's used by taxpayers is fully justified, and you can only find that out by asking questions. So if you go back and look at the Fire Master Plan, maybe you'll be convinced by that Fire Master Plan, but at the time, the 2 Ward 1 councillors weren't. So I just wanted to respond to that.
I didn't hear shots across the bow.
Yeah, I surely didn't mean it that way, and I apologize if I was unclear in that. My comments tonight were just based on what staff had said, not any previous decisions of council, and I tried to make the statement that I thought council would do what was best for our fighters, and certainly included Councillor Merlehan in that comment. So I certainly didn't mean any shots across the bow tonight. Not making a judgment on any previous decision, just asking for clarity from staff on what was the motive for what they were bringing forward here tonight.
Are there other questions? Mr. Brown, go ahead.
Just 2 other comments. One, the other reason I neglected to mention that we originally also were looking at that particular lot in Lunar was because at some point, and I'm not sure if it was in the infancy of looking at it or following after, we were also hopeful that maybe the police were looking at a new Elmira station and whether we could do something jointly with the police. So that was in the mix as well. And because I always like to bring some levity to thing, I figure I mentioned last year, Dale always said when he makes decisions, he wants to make sure they're solid so we don't feel like there's 1 foot in the banana peel and 1 foot in the grave, right, Dale? You said that last year with the voice radio system, and I think it still holds true today.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, is there, does that wrap things up for you? Okay, well, thank you very much. And we will, do you have comments before we turn it over to fire, or you just want us to turn it right over and carry on? Does council want a 5-minute break?
I was gonna make a comment,
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Bert.
and that is, when I looked at the capital budget for this coming year, I was very pleased that every community pretty well is getting something. That should silence our critics when they tell us that we spend all our money on the butter. And I'd really like to say to Ann and to Thomas, you've done a terrific job with Works Building in Conestoga. I know it's not new, but it certainly looks new. It's warm. It's never been warm. And you did an excellent job in the washrooms and the lunchroom. I was in just the other day again and commend you for what you've done.
Thank you. Let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back. Or Larry, did you want to say something before we break? Go ahead, quick.
Yeah, if I may, I just wanted to say that I hated this budget because it's so up in the air as to what's going to happen in the next year. So it was pretty hard to really be critical. It was kind of a guessing game on all around. And I do appreciate how you've kept things intact throughout this pandemic. And kudos to you and the team, man. I think you've done a great job, but I don't look forward to next year because it's just a guessing game at this point as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you. Okay, 5 minutes, let's say 5 after 8.
down back. What would you do about it?
Okay. Everybody's back, I think. Councilor Redikoff, are you there? Expect he'll be there in a moment. Dale, are you gonna start or Dennis, we are,
Yeah, I can start whenever you want.
okay. How are we doing for time here? Why don't you go ahead and start? I think Fred will catch up when he gets back.
Okay, through you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to do just a quick introduction. And then I'll have Dennis, my deputy, he will go through the presentation of our budget. So what I want to start off with, it's been a year like none other that we've ever had, unlike any other department. It's been different, tough for everybody. Everybody just has their own things that they have to deal with. So for us, it's been business as usual. We kept doing what we always do. However, what's changed drastically is how we do our business. And that's, you know, with PPE, when we're responding to medical calls or fire calls or anything like that, we're wearing gowns, masks, face shields. So it's totally different than what our business used to be. However, I'm a big believer in PPE, and I'm pretty proud of the fact that all 6 stations never have had one firefighter that's been afflicted by COVID with any calls that we've had. So that makes me a strong believer in dressing for the occasion. And that's one thing that we've never had a problem getting. We've had a lot of support from the township as far as getting the PPE that's needed to do our job. So for that, I want to thank everybody. So what else has changed is the screening that we have to do for our firefighters, plus our patients. People that we respond to, whatever it is, we have to do a screening for COVID. Sometimes that screening is done prior to us getting there. Our dispatch does some of the screening, or they start it, and then we'll finish it off. We want to send as few people in as we possibly can. We might send 1 or 2 people in to figure out what's going on, and then get everybody dressed accordingly. The other thing that's changed for us is the way we do our training. Although the fire marshal has given us an exemption as far as the number of people that we can get together in a training session. However, we're still required to wear masks and do our physically distancing. So that's important. So what we've done is we've broken our fire departments into 4 sections, and each section will meet. You never have more than 1 at the fire hall at a time. So that's how we lower our numbers down, lowers our chances of you know, getting infected. So the other thing is we've taken on some online training. We've purchased a program that we can send out to the firefighters, and they can do their online training at home. So some stations are doing an hour or 2 of at-home training on the computer, and then they'll come into the fire hall and do the practical training after that. So that seems to be working very good for us right now. The other thing is, there's one slide that I'd like to speak to. prior to giving it to Dennis. I don't want to throw him under the bus. So there's one slide with it has auto extrication equipment and bunker gear. And if you look at the capital budget, you won't see any of that in the budget itself. Somewhere along the line, for our bunker gear, we buy that every year because bunker gear is only good for 10 years for any firefighters. So we have to buy about $35,000 worth of bunker gear. Somewhere we had a hiccup of some kind and it didn't show up on the budget, but that's still something that we have to have. The reason it's so high this year is because 10 years ago is when the Breslau fire station came on board. So we had to get new firefighter gear for all the guys that we had hired at that point. Unbelievably, 10 years have passed and they're due now for new gear. So we've had some conversation, Annie and Richard, and so what they'd like to do is come back next week with a funding stream for that. That was just caught here in the last day or so. So we'll have to get back to you on that. The other one is the $6,000 for the auto extrication that we had in the 20 budget. So what I've done in the past to buy these struts, I like to buy demonstrator units. You can have quite a savings on buying a demonstrator units, and that allows us to get more struts if we do it that way. However, I was waiting till the end of the year to get them, but with COVID, they did very few demonstrations and they had no struts available as far as demonstrators go. So what I'm asking is if we can pull that 6,000 into the 21 budget, and that would go through the equipment contingency fund. So it's unfortunate it doesn't show on your budget sheets, but that's just something that the auto struts would finally give all 6 stations a set, and we'd all have the exact same set so that we could work together on that. And the bunker gear, unfortunately, that's just something that we have to replace because of the timeline. So. And with that, I'll just turn it over to Dennis. And unless you have any questions on this particular item.
Are there any questions, council? Okay, I'll just tack on to what you started with, Chief Martin, and that is a big thank you to the whole fire service, the fire department. This has been a crazy year, and as much as I said that recreation is a public face, you guys have a whole different set of challenges that you've had to deal with this year with not really even knowing what you're stepping into when you step into it. And as you said, you've got to dress the part and learn a whole new way of doing your business and keeping us safe. So thank you for that. And
well, thank you. I'm not asking for any accolades or anything like that, because every department is going through changes, right? So as long as we all do what we're good at, then we'll get through this together.
For sure, for sure. So we'll turn it over to Deputy Chief Aldous. Dennis.
Good evening, everybody. Yeah, so we're going to try and keep it fairly low profile so you can ask some questions. Looking through our budget, you'll see we haven't really added too terribly much into it. So if we can go to the next slide, please, Jeff. So with this slide, it shows you just basically our call summary for this year and breaks down per station. So in 2020, we did 487 calls, which is pretty well on par with 2019. even with some of the protection we got from EMS by reducing the amount of calls that we ran in the early part of COVID. So we're pretty well on par with where we should be. Next slide, please, Jeff. Just some simple goals for us this year. In fire prevention, we're going to continue to collaborate with building and planning and economic development with the COVID patio extensions. It's been, we've done a lot to try and keep those businesses up and running in St. Jacobs and Elmira. And we're just starting with them as well with on-farm businesses. And we want to continue to keep our vulnerable occupancies in schools safe. Even with them going in and out and with all the outbreaks, we're still trying to keep them as safe as we can from our standpoint. With training, we're looking to develop a blended recruit training program to allow NFPA certification upon completion. We've kind of just in the infancy started that late this year with our current recruit class. So we're hoping when they're done in June, approximately in June, that they'll be able to become NFPA certified. We also want to work on an NFPA officer development program, which we kind of started and wanted to get going in the beginning of 2020, but obviously with the way things went, a lot of that schooling just kind of went on the wayside. And with mental health, it's huge for us. So we want to add more firefighters to our critical incident stress management team to bring our complement up. With some recent retirements, it's kind of dwindled down a little bit. So we're going to work at that. Next slide, please, Jeff. For the operating budget, we're looking at a 3% increase in wages for our volunteer firefighters. The goal here is to try and bring our hourly rate in line with our neighboring counterparts. And you'll have seen in our budget in operating, there's an annual cost of about $110,000, $111,000 for our P25 radio system. And that's a cost that's determined by the Waterloo Regional Police, and that's based on $1,000 per year for our radios that we have. Is there any questions on this part of our operating budget?
Councillor Monahan? Sorry, you're muted, Pat.
Sorry. Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Deputy Chief Aldis. Oh, I had some notes here. Just talking about the 3% wage increase. I know the last, I think 3 years now, there's been a 3% increase to get us in line with the neighbors. At what point will we be at a stage where the firefighter increase will be on par with when we do wage increases across the board for the staff, that they'll be in line with that and be able to go forward rather than the larger increases going forward?
I can speak to that through you, Madam Mayor. At 3%, we're never catching up, just so you're aware. We went through a survey with a fire department close by. He did a survey with a whole bunch of different stations, and we're probably about $8 an hour less than the lowest one there. So just gives you some idea. 3% is a little. I think we go from 20, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's around $26 to $26.75 where we're heading with the 3%. So
okay, are we at a situation kind of like you look at the police services and in Waterloo Region, and they compare themselves to Toronto, and the comparators come back? Are we going to be in that kind of a situation going forward, and we can just expect these increases to increase over time? Or
well, to be honest with you, the firefighters aren't really pushing too hard for it. I know we have one station that would like to be to be paid more. However, we're falling way behind. We have a $250 wage that we pay them to carry their pager, whereas probably the cheapest one is around $1,700. And that goes with small municipalities, just our next door neighbors. So no, we're not going to the big departments and want what they want. We're just looking to add up a little higher.
Yeah, I didn't mean that you were doing that. I just meant with the situation as a comparison that we'll pretty much never be able to keep up. And I did have another. Okay, I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Sean?
Thank you. It's kind of hard to follow where we're actually going here, but I do have a couple of questions. And one is on the software and the training. Can you explain that a little bit more? Is that software that we have bought and it's for the upgrade of their license, or what is that all about?
So it's through Madam Mayor to Councillor Shantz. It's a training program that you pay an annual fee for to be able to use their service. So they supply all the training materials, and you just tap into it and you can send it out to all your people. It's a per firefighter cost to us. It's the easiest way right now to get around having a lot of in-house training, so it's working quite well. Unfortunately, I don't know exactly what the costs are for this year, but I know last year it was around $8,000 to $10,000 just for an annual fee for it.
And do you see that happening going forward? And how does that work for the camaraderie of the troops?
Right now we're going forward with it because it seems to be the easiest way to get our training out to everybody. The guys don't mind it because when they come in as smaller groups, they get more hands-on training. They still see each other. Do they want to be able to meet as a whole group all together? Most definitely, because you lose track of what people are doing. And the biggest thing when you're on a fire call is you want to be able to rely on the person that you're with. And if you're not seeing them all the time, you kind of lose that contact. So going forward, is it going to stay here for us for firefighter training all the time? Maybe not, but for other training, yes. It's easy for recruit training because it takes down, they can do some stuff at home and it cuts down on the amount of staffing time that we have to do for training for them.
Okay, and another question I have, and maybe we're not even there yet, but if we aren't, you can tell me. Welfare and Mossa, we've ended the agreement with them, and just wondering, is that going to affect our service to that area at all, or what is the reason for severing that relationship?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Shantz, that wasn't our doings. That was their doing. They wanted to take it all over. So Welfare of Mossa had fire agreements with Woolwich, Wellington, and a number of different Guelph, I guess. So they decided to take it all over themselves. They had a new fire chief take over there, and they determined they could look after it. However, it's about $32,000 of revenue that we used to get from them. So we're minus that. However, there's nothing we could do about it. That was their decision. That was made by their council. However, there were a lot of residents that were upset about it because, you know, they might live 2 miles out of Maryhill, and yet they had to wait for a fire truck to come from Rockwood. So, but like I said, there was nothing we could do about it. We didn't even know it was happening till it had happened. So they never called and discussed anything about it. It was just one day it was done and that was it.
So it's a case of where they're going to be the losers in the end and we just lose the revenue. It's not going to affect our people at all.
No, no. No, it won't affect Woolwich residents at all.
Okay, thanks.
Are there other questions? Okay, want to carry on?
The next slide, please, Jeff. So one of the increases you're going to see is some administrative support. Right now, we're getting 15 hours from a person from the Woolwich Memorial Center. We want to try and increase that from 15 hours a week to 20 hours. It's not supposed to elevate, it's supposed to alleviate some of the backlog in our data entry, help us better look after our firefighter payroll, municipal addressing, inventory, and our quarterly OFM reports, as well as the accident reports that we submit to the insurance for people who have accidents in Woolwich that are not Woolwich residents, so we get some income back from them. It's to help make sure all those reports get filed and we actually can receive payment for it. Next slide, please, Jeff. So I guess before we get into capital, is there any other questions on our operating budget?
Councilor Mohan?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz, to I guess either Dale or Dennis. The admin support. What does that account for in the increase in the staff costs for admin? Because when I just looked at the initial fire services admin, the budget for this year is about 60,000 more. Is that position?
It's in our through Mayor Shantz to Councilor Merlin. It's in our part-time salaries. The increase looks to be just a little under $30,000. Our actual for 2020 was 29,751, and we're estimating it to be 55,115. So it's just a small increase. Wow.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, carry on.
So I guess in capital and fleet equipment, I guess just one of our highlights is we did receive our Maryhill pumper tanker last year. So next slide, please, Jeff. Some of our capital is SCBA. Last year in 2020, we budgeted to receive our first half, which we got in late 2020. And we're expecting the second half delivery in early 21, which turns out is actually probably early next week. So that'll be in place. So you'll see that in there. That cost is in our capital. Next, please, Jeff.
One thing you should add on to that is that we did have pre-budget approval for that 2021 purchase on the breathing apparatus.
So this slide Chief Martin's already talked about, so we can move on unless anybody has any questions. And then capital for fleet replacement. We're scheduled to replace the St. Jacobs pumper, but it's good to note that actually in 2021, there was supposed to be 2 trucks replaced, St. Jacobs pumper and Conestoga's rescue. We've deferred Conestoga's rescue off until 22. And then 22, we were supposed to replace Elmira's rescue, and we pushed it off till 2023 in order to balance it a little bit more for our fleet. Any questions on any of our capital?
No, I'm not seeing any. I don't see any questions. Do you have more, or is that the end?
That's all the slides that there are.
Okay. Well, very good. Thank you. Thank you very much, Council. Is there anything else? Councilor Merlihan?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz, to Dennis. With the fire prevention budget, it kind of looks like it's back to business as usual. And you did mention some of the things that you were going to be working on with the education at certain homes, and I forget what the other thing is. But the other thing that was in the budget was what's it called? The arson, or the children's safety home that we do 5,000 every year. Is the children's safety home, is that open? And I'm not sure it would be open to students or anything. Is that operating this year or last year?
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Merlin, it's still in operation. They're had to obviously push everything virtual. So with that, there's been some added challenges to it. If through Woolwich updates lately, they've been trying to push out all their curriculum and stuff to get it out to the parents, because the challenge is the kids that they normally go talk to aren't legally allowed to have social media accounts and stuff. So they're trying to push it in through the parents. Like most of our facilities, that facility is aging, so they have to make some upgrades and stuff to it. So it's still there. They're trying to work forward, and hopefully by the next school year, they'll be able to start to be back in teaching kids in there again. So.
Okay, I was just curious how they were operating. Thanks.
Mr. Patrick, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So just want to sort of go back to the admin support and just make sure that council got the correct picture and clarification. So the increase is about $6,000 from the 2020 to the 2021 budget. So that's where I think Dennis is saying there's a minor increase, and it's that increasing in the amount of hours. So I just wanted to make sure the council knew that. So the 2020 budget was almost 49,000. And the 2021 budget is going to be just a little over 55,000. So that's kind of what we're talking about. And that's that part-time line in administration.
Thank you. Anything else, council? Okay, before we move out of the meeting, Richard, would you have anything from last meeting that you wanted to report back on? Or I don't have anything in mind. I just when you spoke, I thought I should ask.
No, so if you're Madam Mayor, I mean, I will just highlight some of the things I was tracking, just so that it's still on our mind. One of them was still talking about traffic calming and potentially adding some additional funding to that budget line. I can tell you right now, staff had a preliminary discussion on it. And we're still going to have some further discussion about how that can be achieved. And we're going to be bringing that to you guys next week, probably next Thursday when we have our final budget deliberation night. I think one of the things that I did hear, though, is always being careful of how much we add to that, because there is limited staff availability to manage that program. So while, yes, I think we were only talking 5,000, I think Mr. Poupé said, staff can handle the additional 5,000 and would welcome the $5,000 in funding. I think it was just depending on how much funding was going to be allocated to the traffic calming and setting expectations that the staff resources can only do so much. But he was very comfortable with the 5 I think we talked about last week. The other one was, I think we still had a brief discussion about potentially maybe even looking at some COVID relief funding, sending some money aside from someplace. I think Councillor McMillan talked about maybe from the Climate Action Greening Levy potentially, but that was just a thorough comment. And whether we were interested in setting some money aside that maybe we'd partner with a community group and helping those that have been most affected by economically from the COVID pandemic. Then tonight, just made note that we will be reporting back on the minor sports subsidies through our quarterly reporting. And then we'll be adding that to the 2022 budget. So you'll see the expense line as well as the revenue line for that. So you see the full revenue and then what the subsidized costs would be in going forward in the 2022 budget. The other two is just what Dale mentioned in his presentation, released right at the start of it, was looking at adding 55 or 35,000 for bunker gear and 6,000 in the auto extraction in their capital budget. So that's kind of what I've been keeping track of so far.
And I think that breakdown was also going to be in the quarterly reporting then on the WMC.
Yes, for the yeah. So the subsidy will be not just the WMC, it'll be WMC and St. Jacobs Sand Parks. Yeah, it'll be for everything.
Okay, Council, is there anything else that Richard's missed? Councilor McMillan?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Shantz, through you. I think Mr. Pedrick got pretty close there. I just wanted to clarify, I had been talking about possibly using the any unspent money or money we couldn't spend on the greening infrastructure and using that for traffic calming. And then I was thinking about having a, above the 1.5% that's currently being requested from staff, having possibly another levy increase that is specifically for COVID relief. That could be, if it wasn't used, switched to either the infrastructure levy or, future contingency reserve. But I certainly want to make sure that staff isn't taking direction from me alone. I think we'd want to make sure that it's the will of council before staff did any work on what my suggestion was.
Yeah, and through Madam Mayor, I think for me, I was just making sure that I captured the discussion and it just didn't get lost, and council still had an opportunity to discuss and debate that if they wish to.
Councilor Merlehan?
Yeah, one thing I was hoping that the Parks Department could look at whether or not they could hold off on the Heidelberg fencing until there was a plan in place. And if they can at least look at that and report back whether or not they think that's a good idea or not. They don't need to say now. It would certainly give them time to think about it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I don't see anything else, so thank you to everyone. I will need a motion that the committee of the whole rise and report to council. Moved by Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor Merlehan. All those in favor? That's carried. Motion that council confirms and adopts the proceedings of the committee of the whole. Councilor Redikoff, Councilor McMillan, all those in favor? That's carried. And unless there's anything else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn to meet again in special session on Tuesday, January 12th at 6 o'clock. Councilor Shantz and Councilor there, you just moved from this side of the screen to the other, and I thought it was somebody else putting their hand up. I almost had you moving and seconding.
I think Murray just fell off his chair.
Okay, all those in favor? Very good. Thank you to all who tuned into the meeting tonight. To council members, I'll remind you to stay connected on Zoom until the live stream has stopped. And I will say good night and see you